Let me
Yeah.
take my coins out.
As ready as we'll ever be.
All right. So, first, what's your name?
My name's Hanna Miley.
And my name is Verena Lang.
Could you explain a little bit about your family and how that relates to your story?
I was born in 1932, and 11 months later, Hitler came to power. My parents were Jews, and we lived in Germany. And I was an only child. My parents were older, and very naturally, I was this spoiled little child. And my parents, at great cost, sent me to England with a kinder transport. But as a small child, not understanding, I felt that they had abandoned me. So the relationship with the parents, even after when we were separated, the relationship with the parents was such that I actually harbored anger. So that was part of the suppression of my parents. And you see, God is so amazing, when we just invite him to be part of our story. That, gradually, as I was able, he took me out of that. And so the journey I recount from Poland is very much part of the reconnection. And, today I feel the love of my parents. And you see, Verena, whose father was this Nazi, God chose that we come together because, God is so amazing. The infinite creative variety of ways that he brings this reconciliation between us, even after our parents are dead.
I was born in 1944, and at that time, my father was the second man of Salzburg after the, how do you call it? After the Gauleiter. After the Gauleiter. The Gauleiter was the head of all, and he was the second man in Salzburg. And I never experienced him as a Täter,
a criminal.
As a criminal. But when I was brought up, the society said all Nazis are criminals. So I loved my father, but the society said this, and I couldn't endure this, because you cannot endure to love your father and to know he is a criminal. So I left it out, that my father was a Nazi. And I was brought up, and he was in prison for 2.5 years after the war, and I had seen him when I was 3 years. So there was something what should really be healed. It was this loss of the father, And I think when I was very young, I said to myself, this father is not allowed to live anymore. And this brought me in a deep bondage to my father. And this was terrible. And the marriage of my father was not very good. So he took me like a friend or like his spouse, yeah. And I didn't know this. But when I was 18, he died. And he was a god for me. So all broke down, and I became very ill. I had something with my back, and it lasted for 45 years. And then I fell in a deep hole, in a dark, deep hole. And then, even then, I was not able to recognize what happened to me. But when I became a believer, the Lord really overwhelmed me with love, with presence. I can't tell you, like Paul experienced it, yeah. And after this, he said to myself, now it's the time to get on with the story with your father. And at the first time I didn't recognize it, but I felt in a deep depression. And I didn't know that this was the other side of my anger. I had a deep anger against him. And I can really say I hated him for 2 or 3 years, I think. But he was dead, so it was not easy to handle it. But because of prayers of deliverance and healing, I got through, and after 10 years, I could really say, I will forgive you. And yeah, and if I will meet him, I don't know if I will meet him, but if I will meet him, I think I can embrace him now. And that's the Lord, the work of the Lord, you know. So I think that's what happened with me. And there is also a story with my mother, because my mother left me also. I was 14 months old and both left and led me back with a refugee from Prussia. She was an angel, yeah, because I think if I wouldn't have her, I would have died. But this, and then my mother, when my father came home, he was not allowed to uh, get on in his profession. He only in 1950 he was allowed to go on in his profession. So my mother had to work, and I didn't see her. So I had no relationship to her. And once, when I sat in front of the Lord, it came in my mind, I have really to be reconciled with my mother too. And I said to her, I will forgive that you went off when I was 14 months old. And I didn't recognize it, but after a week, I experienced that I had no aches in my back. I was really healed, only by forgiveness.
And what got you interested in unity and reconciliation within the Church Universal?
When or
What got you
what?
interested?
I think it's partly due to my story, because my Jewish background and then the loss of my parents in the Holocaust was what drew me to Christ. The fact that the wounds within me, I attempted to overcome them and I could not. And so when Jesus healed these wounds, that led to this gradually an awareness that there are wounds in the different Christian traditions. And so my own life story has led me to an intense passion to see unity, not the same, but diversity, but loving one another.
And for me, it was because I think I was not baptized, and so I was, as it was written in my in meinem Taufschein, was ohne religiöses Bekenntnis, without religion confession. And so I was brought in, given to a Protestant class, and I stayed with them for 8 years, and I identified with these Protestants, you know. But my husband was Catholic, and when we got married, he wanted to be married in the church, so I got baptized. But it's a very difficult story because I couldn't take Jesus as my Lord at that time. But 11 years later, I was singing in a choir in our town, and the Lord really uh, pulled an arrow in my heart,
Shot an arrow.
shot an arrow in my heart, and so I had to react, to answer, and this was at the Holy Thursday at the Eucharist, and this arrow was shot in my heart during when the priest says, "Do this for my memory." So I knew I would like to, I had a deep longing to go to communion, but I didn't know how to handle it. And I said, I'm now a Catholic, and I think I need confession before. So it happened. And then I think this is the reason I couldn't stand this division, you know, because I was brought up more Protestant, and now I became Catholic. So I said to myself, no, it's only it's necessary to be united.
What has been one of your most powerful memories of reconciliation, whether connected to Wittenberg or not? Probably not in each of your cases.
Well, the most powerful experience is actually connected to Verena. And it took me a long time to work through my parents' loss. In childhood and early adulthood, I dealt with it by shutting it off. You know, it was a closed door and I put heavy bricks on it. But slowly, after encountering Jesus, he brought me to engage with my real parents, although they were dead. And I had the desire to honor them by following their footsteps to the place where they were gassed in Poland, from Germany, where we began as a family, to Poland. And my husband and I invited 8 friends to accompany us on the journey. And in Jewish tradition, you need 10 people to pray. And we were 10. And we followed my parents' steps. And the climax of this journey, there was several climaxes, but one of the great ones was when we reached the gate that was closed because it was a holiday in Poland. We could not go through the gate, it was locked. But behind the gate, as we looked through the spaces in the metal bars, we could see the place where the truck had taken my parents and 60 other Jews and driven them and gassed them as they drove. And I found myself holding on to the bars, and next to me was Verena, and I'll let her tell you why that was so significant. But we wept together and knelt down together. And you know, that was an amazing experience to have Jewish and Nazi ancestors behind us and meeting in deep love and commitment to one another, and also a commitment to redeem the past.
Yes, this was also a very deep eine sehr tiefe Erfahrung, a deep experience. But for me, one experience was also very deep. We were on the leadership of the Charismatic Renewal, and for the first time, the European leaders met in Częstochowa in Poland. And the next day, we went to Auschwitz. And The day before, a Polish bishop told us, and I think he was Jewish, that his mother and his sister were shot in Ravensbrück because they were in the Polish resistance. And when we stand in front of the wall, the wooden wall where they all were shot, I saw this bishop and I said to myself, somebody should ask him for forgiveness. So I didn't know how to do it. And so I went out and I met Charles Whitehead. He was the president of the International Charismatic Renewal. And he knew me very well. And I asked him, Charles, somebody should ask him for forgiveness. And he knew my story. So he said, I think it's you. Whew. And then we went to Krakow. This was a big new built church. And we had a very good healing service because you get in deep depression when you go to Auschwitz. And I said to myself, what shall I do? Is it from the Lord that I ask him for forgiveness? Lord, show me. I don't know. I was really very nervous. I was going in and out. And then I said to the Lord, Lord, I can't know. It's not possible for me to know what you want me to do. But when you bring me in front of this bishop, because there were 700 people, then I see it as a sign and I will ask him for forgiveness. And I think in 10 minutes later, I was in front of the bishop. And so I asked him, Bishop Dembowski, I ask you for forgiveness what my father and my country did to you and your country. And he embraced me fatherly and said, yes, I will forgive you. But it was the first time that he said, but I know daughters of Nazis have also suffered a lot. So he embraced me very deep. And then a lot of tears flowed down. And this was really a very deep experience.
So, in your mind, what does reconciliation within the body of Christ look like?
The first thing that comes into my head when you ask that question is that first, for it even to happen, we need to each confess to one another the separated parties. There needs to be individuals who have a real conviction to go to the other and to talk together and to tell one another's stories and then to express forgiveness. And I think it looks like the experience that we're having here, where we each have our own traditions and which we honor and respect. For example, I'm an Anglican, and I rejoice to be an Anglican, but I have great love in my heart for the Catholic tradition because my soul has been fed by the treasures that are in the Catholic Church. For example, the writings of Teresa of Avila. And I want to embrace what is good. And like we heard today, the Catholics were confessing the pain and the darkness in their tradition. And I think that's where it begins and where we respect one another in reality, not kind of like superficially.
I think this is a very deep longing of our Lord to be reconciled, because he became mankind and suffered on the cross and this was to be reconciled with the Father. So I think we have to step in if we want to be successors. And for me, my experience is it's very painful, but it fills you with joy afterwards. Because I think if you do this, you follow in some respect what the Lord suffered for us. But He has joy about all who come to Him and follow and take the cross and follow in that way. So I think, and my experience was, I have to be reconciled with myself. I have to be reconciled with my family, with my father, especially. It was a very long journey to be reconciled with my father, and also with my mother. And then you can go on, and the Lord will show you how you and which stream of the body or which kind of other people you are in front of, that you should be reconciled. And I think there must be a lot of joy in the heaven. I think the angels must dance, I think.
I'm sure.